Let's begin with a clip from one of my all-time favorite stories. Okay? This is a clip from Fiddler on the Roof. How many of you have seen Fiddler on the Roof? All right, a lot of you have seen Fiddler on the Roof, right? Okay, so this is a real fun song, and it really introduces our topic well. Go ahead, Cameron. Oh, wait a minute. Don't start yet. Some of you haven't seen this. This is a story about a Jewish village. And Tevi, this man, is married to Godi. And they have 5 daughters. Now, what's happening is his world is also in transition because there's political upheaval, there is economic change going on. This village, this Jewish village, is in Russia. And so all kinds of things are happening, and he has heard that they are going to come, the Russians, and start some political unrest in their village as an excuse to get rid of their village. So they're going to have to migrate. And aside from that, he finds out things from his daughters. And that's going to cause more disruption in your life. Some of you who are dads, you know, nothing can disrupt your life more than daughters in transition. Okay? So he's going through all this stress, and so he comes with at a very special moment, with a very special need. He's going to come to his wife, and he will be basically asking for what I have called in the title of today's sermons, apples of gold in settings of silver. Okay, Cameron. Let's get the volume up.
Golda, do you love me?
Do I what?
Do you love me?
Do I love you?
Well?
With our daughters getting married and there's trouble in the town, you're upset, you're worn out, go inside, go lie down. Maybe it's indigestion.
No, Golda, I'm asking you a question. Do you love me?
You're a fool.
I know. But do you love me?
Do I love you?
Well?
For 25 years I've washed your clothes, cooked your meals, cleaned your house, given you children, milked your cow. After 25 years, why talk about love right now?
Golda, the first time I met you was on our wedding day. I was scared.
I was shy.
I was nervous.
So was I.
But my father and my mother said we'd learn to love each other. And now I'm asking, Golda, do you love me?
I'm your wife.
I know. But do you love me?
Do I love him?
Well?
For 25 years I've lived with him, fought with him, starved with him. 25 years my bed is his. If that's not love, what is?
That you love me.
I suppose I do.
And I suppose I love you too. It doesn't change a thing, but even so, after 25 years, it's nice to know.
Okay, so if you haven't seen this, go check it out. It's a great, great story. It talks about a lot of things that we can relate to. I love the way it ends. It says, it doesn't change a thing, but even so, after 25 years, it's nice to know. And not only does he have her say it to him, but he, in turn, says it to her. Okay? Now, that scenario might feel familiar to you because I think this kind of thing happens, even if it isn't so dramatic, in many households, in many families. And what he is asking for, as I said, is what Proverbs 25:11 speaks of, that is so cherished, so beautiful, so valuable, so unique and special. Let me read Proverbs 25:11 to you. It says, "A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver." All right? Hey, I just thought of a great application. Look back there and you see another big screen television. Okay? If you go into the room where we have the big TV, another big screen television. You see, John has been working so hard, our council chairperson, to upgrade and to make ministry more effective. So if you see him, say thank you. Say I appreciate it. Say that really helps when we're watching a missions presentation or when Pastor Ken puts on a YouTube or something like that. See? Because guess what? That's an apple of gold in a setting of silver, right? And so that's what we can do. And it's very important in the midst of all this that Tevi feels the need for this. And, he needs something to help him weather the crisis, to make it through what he knows is going to be a lot of turbulence in his life. Now, physically, we have a lot of help and information about what we should do when we need a pick-me-up, when we need some more pep, when we need more energy. What are some of the things that people do or use when they are in need of physical energy? Coffee, yeah, and of course tea. What else? Beer? Does that work? I don't know. I have no idea. Anything else? Anybody use 5-hour energy? You know, that little bottle drink? College kids use it all the time. I bet you during this week of finals, there's going to be a lot of 5-hour energy drunk, okay? Some of the other things I've thought of is back in the old days, remember Coca-Cola? What was the slogan for Coca-Cola? The pause that refreshes. Just stop and take a can or a bottle of Coke. Some of you go to massage, right? You go get yourself a full-body massage, and that rejuvenates you and makes you feel better. Others, like me, we go to the gym and we work out, and we do something very, very exhausting. I remember one morning after we had labored with a woman who had pancreatic cancer for about 4 years, and she came home to die, and the morning that she was going to expire and go home to be with the Lord, we were there, and it was emotionally very draining. So the very next thing I did when we finished taking care of her and the family, I went home because she only lived about 2.5 miles from my house. I did a 10-mile run, okay? Just got to work all that stuff out of your system to come back, be ready to go. There's one more that I haven't heard. Which one? What? What did you say? Shopping. I didn't think of that one. You know why? Because I'm a guy. The one I was thinking of was chocolate. Eat chocolate, right? We have all these different ways to help ourselves physically. But God is saying here that there is something even more precious, even more helpful, even more valuable. Let me read Proverbs 25:11 from the Message version, which clarifies it and makes it very, very easy to grasp. Quote, "The right word at the right time is like a custom-made piece of jewelry." Okay, now if you're like me, well, jewelry, big deal. But you get the idea, all right, of the value. This is what we're calling, as we continue in our sermon series on the 5 languages of love. We come to the first one today. And the person who wrote the book that kind of helps to narrow it down from the many, many languages of love to 5 predominant ones, Dr. Gary Chapman, he calls these words of affirmation. And so in today's clip, we saw Tevi as a man dying for a word of encouragement and affirmation. He wants to know that after 25 years of ups and downs, whether the promise of his father did come true in their lives. And so he turns to her and says, "Do you love me?" And after a long time of thinking this is so weird for him, after 25 years, she affirms it. And then the rest of the story proceeds, and he has to handle all these problems. And it's, just like a football player, right? When you have finished playing a series of downs, you go to the sideline. You see them on the sideline? They got so many things to help you to be refreshed, to get ready to go back in again, right? They've got the water bottles, they've got the fan, they've got these things that spray mist for you. They've got people over there providing people with massage. They're doing all that kind of stuff to get people going again. Here's the thing about this first point. What is special out of all 5 languages of love is that this one is kind of unique. It's a very special form of love because it is a love that builds up the other person and counteracts the breaking down of people that life causes. Okay? Life wears us down. But words of affirmation can build us up and make us strong so that we can handle life. It is different from gifts. It is different from service. It is different from time together, and it is different from touch. It is like a breath of fresh air, a balm that soothes, a 10-second miracle workout, or 10 minutes of meditation. It just gets better and better, and this is one of the best. And so we should not undervalue the full power of these things. Earlier I was going to get something from my pack, and I kept forgetting to do it, and then I forgot what I was going to get. Here's the book, okay? The 5 Love Languages, How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate. And you wouldn't believe it. I'm a great user of our library system. And so I have library cards at about 5 or 6 different libraries. And I save a lot of money. And so I go online and I try to see which library's got a book so that I can check it out. And I tell you, library after library, this book was checked out or on reserve and on hold. I have never seen another book that at so many different libraries was already checked out. So anyway, in this book, Dr. Chapman tells a story, and I'm just going to read portions of it. He says, several years ago, I was sitting in my office with my door open. A lady walking down the hall said, have you got a minute? Sure, come on in. She sat down and said, Dr. Chapman, I've got a problem. I can't get my husband to paint our bedroom. I have been after him for 9 months. I have tried everything I know, and I can't get him to paint it. Okay, so this led to a further conversation. She talks about how one time, he spent all this time washing and waxing his car, but he wouldn't go in there and paint the bedroom. And so Dr. Chapman says, are you certain that your husband knows that you want the bedroom painted? She says, I know he does. I have been after him for 9 months. Well, let me ask you one more question. Does your husband ever do anything good? She says, like what? He says, like taking the garbage out, or getting bugs off the windshield of the car you drive, or putting gas in the car, or paying the electric bill, or hanging up his coat. And she says, yes, he does some of those things. And he says, well, then I have 2 suggestions. One, don't ever mention painting the bedroom again. I repeated, don't ever mention it again. She says, well, I don't see how that's going to help. And he says, look, you just told me that he knows that you want the bedroom painted. You don't have to tell him anymore. He already knows. The second suggestion I have is that the next time your husband does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. And then he goes through the whole list of things that she could compliment him for. And then she concludes by saying, I don't see how that's going to get the bedroom painted. Well, Dr. Chapman says, well, you asked for my advice. You have it. It's free. She wasn't very happy when she left, he says. But 3 weeks later, she came back into my office and said, it worked. She had learned that verbal compliments are far greater motivators than nagging words. And so basically, the first thing we're talking about is how powerful a simple thing like this can be. How powerful if consistently applied. We teach this as one of the things that parents should do with their children, is to constantly give them verbal affirmation. One time, I was visiting my dentist, and he says, hey, your teeth are pretty straight. I says, yeah, how did that turn out? Because all of my kids, we sent them to the orthodontist, but I never saw an orthodontist. He says, well, that's the function of your tongue. I says, my tongue? He says, yeah, every time your tongue presses against the teeth, that little bit of pressure causes them to align properly. I says, are you kidding me? And so my mind immediately goes to the Grand Canyon, right, which is caused by nothing more than water. So the powerful thing that comes about because some little thing that turns out more powerful than you know is consistently applied, and therefore we should not underestimate this little thing we call verbal affirmation. Let me read to you another verse, because as the story that I just chose kind of illustrates, words can be a two-edged sword. It can be positive or negative. So I want you to take a look at Ephesians 4:29. Ephesians 4:29, and as I read it, I'm going to add another translation right in there that comes from the New Living Translation, which kind of amplifies it and gives you a further understanding of it, all right? So it says, let no corrupting, and the New Living Translation says abusive, all right? So let no corrupting or abusive talk come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may do what? Provide what? Grace. That it may give grace to those who hear. Grace for whom? For the person who hears. Okay? So this is a nice verse, and we're going to be using various parts of that verse to explain this method of love language, this verbal affirmation. Because this verse begins by pointing out that there is both positive talk and what kind of talk? Negative talk, yeah. Negative talk that is, probably more what we hear. Guys, have you ever gone to fill up your car with gas and you need a premium and you put in the low grade, and you had knocking in your engine and its failure to perform? One time I did something almost worse than that. I wasn't paying attention and I came up to it and I grabbed the nozzle with the green rubber. Yeah, green, right? Diesel fuel. Fortunately, when I jammed it in, I couldn't jam it in. Yeah. Whew. California State saved me my car. Because if I had put that in, it would have ruined my engine and my car. The same thing. The wrong kind of fuel. If you are giving people negative feedback, if you are being negative all the time, you're doing what that person who came and talked to Dr. Chaplin had been doing, and no wonder she was getting nowhere. And so he made sure first to get her to stop doing it, and then to change up. And you may think I'm belaboring the point, but I can tell you, after 30 years of counseling husbands and wives, I'm not belaboring the point. Most people vastly underestimate the value of verbal affirmation. Most people don't even know that it's needed. Godey did not know that it was needed. Tevi only discovered after 25 years that it was needed. But, those who study these things say absolutely, and even more important, God in Ephesians 4:29 says, absolutely do this. And so that's what we need to do. We could throw diesel into an engine, or we can try to put out a fire and accidentally throw what onto it to make it worse? Gasoline, right? So let's be careful. Let's take the advantage of this simple method to provide people with a breath of fresh air, to reinvigorate them, and to renew them. I want you to do something for me right now, okay? I want you all get up, stand up straight. All right? So lift your head as tall as possible, and I want you to just take a deep breath. You feel more energized? You feel a little more relaxed? You feel a little refreshed? One breath. That's the power that is illustrated here of verbal affirmation. Okay, you can sit down, or you can take another deep breath and then sit down. Hey, and I'll tell you, if you're starting to fall asleep in a sermon, just get up. Run in place if you need to. Anyway, so that's the value of it, and it is so easy, and it doesn't cost us a nickel to do. See, sometimes we think we got to do something spectacular. Got to give her a Mercedes-Benz, right? How many of you can afford to give your spouse a Mercedes-Benz? Well, even if you were able to, do you want to? Okay, but these things are so simple and can be done every day, continually. All right, let's move to the second point now. I think you understand the power and effectiveness of it. It not only helps people, but it can even transform relationships and people. All right, and if you have a bedroom that needs to be painted, it can get that done too. Okay, second, we need to understand the use of love languages on multiple levels. So now I'm going to step back and I'm going to talk about all of the 5 love languages to help you to get a general understanding, because it's important to have these clarifications, otherwise we misapply them. Okay? And you got to remember that love languages need to be seen in a special way. How many lenses are my glasses? 2. Same thing with these love languages. You've got to see them through both lenses. Oftentimes, we look at it only through our own lens of myself instead of the other, so that we think that if we have said it, the people who heard it should what? Hear it and understand it. And I'll tell you, that does not happen. Wives, remember how many times you would ask your husband to do something, and later on, they didn't hear a thing, right? But it happens with all of us. I remember one time I was talking to somebody on the phone, and they had called to ask for some advice. And I told them what to do, and this person turned to tell the spouse what I had said, and I'm listening to it, and I think, I didn't say that. You know? And so she was listening through what we call filters. And so she filtered it, and she ended up hearing what she wanted to hear or what she thought I was saying. Okay? And instead of really hearing. And so it's important for us to remember, as those who communicate, especially when we are saying verbal affirmations, that not only do we get it out properly, but the person at the other end hears it correctly. And my wife is real good, because sometimes she will ask me in various ways, what did I say? And then, I know she's got me if I haven't been listening, and I confess right away. But, if I've been listening, I'm able to tell her back what she says, and she's very happy with that. Okay? And so you want to make sure that other people hear it, because you want the love to be received. Now, I've got some relatives in my family. Their love language is giving gifts. Okay? This couple has a lot of time on their hands, and they like to shop. So they shop, and they bring these things back. During Christmas and other important days, my wife and I, we basically give money. Not because we're Chinese, okay? But because we don't have the time to shop. But this couple, they like to give gifts. But sometimes the gifts they give, we're all looking around. What is this? What do we do with this? What can I... Okay, we're going to have a white elephant party. We can move it on to somebody else. We can re-gift it. See? And so while they had the language of giving gifts as their language of love, they didn't pay attention to the recipient. And so the gift that is given leaves people more puzzled than blessed and feeling loved. And so we need to remember that for all communication. Transmission alone is not enough. Right reception is absolutely necessary. Okay? And so along the way, 2 things come up. If I were to say to you, verbal affirmation, giving gifts, personal time, quality time, service, or physical touch, what is it that you need most? Do you know? Think about it. Out of those 5. I've had some husbands say, my wife never touches me. She never holds me. I want a hug, and she doesn't want to give it. Total surprise when I heard that. So we have to be very aware. And likewise, the other application is you think about the important people in your life: spouse, children, parents, best friend. What language of love do they most need? And then sometimes what they most need is not what you're good at. And so you have to adjust and adapt in order to give it. And I can see some of you thinking through in your head, thinking through different people in your life. And that's great, okay? And I'm glad you're thinking that through. This is such a simple tool, but like I said, it's such an effective tool. Okay, I better keep moving. And let's look at that verse some more, okay? And just to be real clear, let's put Ephesians 4:29 back up, all right? And it's talking about negative talk, and it's talking about good talk, and I want you to see three things about this, and we've already talked about those who hear as being the important part, but there's three things that I want you to look at. Number one, for building up, we've kind of talked about that. Number two, it's got to fit the occasion, and number three, it gives what? Grace. See, this is why it's a love language. It gives grace. And so we are to be giving grace to other people. And that's important for me to point out. You remember the times when God the Father in the New Testament, and he spoke? Who did he speak to? He spoke to who? No, New Testament. New Testament. That was Jesus speaking. And this is just to get your mental gears engaged. All right? I'm not grading anybody for right answers or wrong answers. He spoke to Jesus. Remember? And what did he say? You're my what son? Beloved son. And how does he feel about him? I'm well pleased with you. And if you read the New Testament, Jesus knew that. He said, I'm here doing what I heard, what I've seen, what I've been called to do. And at the end of his life, he says, I have fulfilled God's calling, and the work that he gave me to do, I've done it all. So he had no doubts. He had no problems with his self-esteem. So it wasn't like he was in need of a breath of fresh air. But the Father to the Son, God to God, still would say such a thing. If God would say that to God, why wouldn't we? And it's just another way of saying, I love you. Okay? And like Godey, many of us may have trouble with those three words. In fact, one Cantonese pastor says, oh, I love my people, but you know what? I can't come to them and I say I love you, because that's too hard for Chinese. It's too strong, too powerful. He says, I can only say, I like you. I feel tender towards you. Okay? I can say it in Cantonese, but I can't say it in Mandarin. Okay? 我恨你. Can't say 我愛你, you know? Anyway, and so it's hard. But, you know, you don't have to go all the way to that point. There are many kinds of verbal affirmations. We can express any kind of words of kindness, whether they're compliments, whether they're appreciations, whether acknowledgement of things that they have done. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 tells us to encourage one another and to build up one another. And here's the thing I want us to focus in on from that verse 29 in Ephesians 4. All right? The whole purpose is to give love, give grace. See, the problem is when we give you practical techniques, You focus on the technique. But the technique is the means to the ends. And so you want to be loving. Have you ever been complimented by a salesperson? Yeah. And why are they doing it? Buttering you up, that's right. They want to make the sale, right? They want you to like them so that you sign on the dotted line, not only on the contract, but on your checkbook. Well, that's the problem. Sometimes we get to the point where we will fall into the idea of it being a technique rather than the reality, and we will not be able to do it properly. And so that's the most important thing as we're talking about this third point of how to use it well, how to understand it well. So the second thing is, even though a lot of times for words of affirmation, it's a gender thing. Women are better with words. Men are not as good with words. And so we struggle to give them to the women. See, and I think God made it this way not to frustrate us, okay? I think God made it this way so that it would force us into that agape love zone, right? Where you have to love beyond yourself. You have to love when people are naturally not that easy to love, where expressing it is not so simple. And we have to approach God-like love. And so a lot of times he'll make it that way. And he'll have opposites attracting so that they can take their love to the next level and make it a greater love. And so for men and women, we need to observe that kind of a difference. But these generalizations aren't always true. For example, I find that one of my love nourishment languages is when I get words of affirmation. And I discovered that quite by accident. One day, I was leading the whole church leadership staff and volunteers. There were about 150, 160 people there, and we were at a retreat in a nice park. We were in the Brand Park in Glendale, which has a Japanese tea garden and flower garden, and we were just setting aside that time for them to refresh and renew. And the person who was a speaker before me ran overtime. In fact, she ran overtime so much that she used up all of my time and some of the next person's time. So I got up and I had my whole bundle of presentation that I had worked for days and days on. And since I was a leader, what was I going to do? I could have used up some more time with what I was going to do, but the retreat is for the officers and not for me. And so with the translator next to me, I looked at my stuff and I summarized the whole thing in one sentence. And I said, okay, now I want you to go ahead and start your retreat. And she looked at me and she was so shocked and says, Pastor Ken, that is so kind of you. And suddenly I felt all warm and my eyes got a little moist. And I thought, she appreciates it, the sacrifice. And so I discovered it. And so some of you may not really realize what your love nourishment language is. But you can, if you think about the things that happen in your life, you will do it. Individually, different. One psychologist gives this example from his children. He says, early as a parent, I didn't know about the love languages. I just assumed that the same words coming from the same parent, me, would have the same impact on different children. It didn't work out that way at all. I went into one child's room when they were little, and I was tucking that child in at night, and I would walk through the I love you little talk. Quote, I love you so much. I love your face. I love your voice. I love your laugh. I love getting to be your dad. There's nothing that means more to me than that. And then he says, This particular kid, his eyes would get real big and wide, and they would lock into mine, and they would get a little moist, and this little kid would say, "I love you too, Daddy." It was such a tender moment. Then he says, I went into the next bedroom. This is a true story. I'll never forget this. The same talk. "I love you so much, honey. I love your voice. I love your face. I love the way you laugh. There's nothing that means more to me than being your dad." That kid was staring right at me. No tears, but they were staring right at me. Then she said, "Daddy, I think you have something hanging upside down way up inside your nose." Okay, she was not impressed with those words. So different people will take it differently, and even something that you think would have worked equally for both girls will not always work, or for both guys, or your same kids. So anyway, the whole idea is let it be giving of grace, because, the Bible says our love should be sincere. We should love from a pure heart. And that's where we need to be, to always be giving sincere love. So, let me bring it to a close. The main point of love languages is this. The object of love is not getting something you want, but doing something for the well-being of the one you love. But when we love, guess what? Guess what we get back? We get love back as well. All right? So anyway, these are important. God says He's planted His love in our hearts, Romans 5:5, and so we should be using these things. Going to just really quickly conclude with this story. I clipped it from USA Today on February 13th. No, February 13th. The day before Valentine's Day, all right? And the title is this: Man has written 10,000 love notes to his wife in 40 years. Are you impressed? He started doing this when he first met her in the 70s. And these were all handwritten, or they would be computerized later on. Sometimes they would be on napkins or on 3x5 cards, and she kept all these notes. Okay? And he didn't make them real long. Sometimes they were just a sentence or two. Sometimes they were a paragraph. And I just chose this to say we can do it, whether it's this one that men are more challenging, but at the same time, we can do it. And in doing it, guess what the real payoff is? Besides the love that the person feels, besides the love that we experience, we become transformed. We become changed. And as it says in 1 Timothy 1:5, talking about using church as our boot camp, it says, but the goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Okay? And the ESV translates it. I was reading from the New American Standard, which I've used for most of my adult life. The ESV says, the aim of our charge. You know what that means? That means our command. Okay? Our command to you as being Christians. This is a kind of more formal way of putting it, instead of our instruction, is that you will have pure, sincere love. And you will be effective and find ways to do it. So, let me finish with some homework. You ready to write this down? Okay, here's the homework. You'll like this, okay, Perry? Don't worry about it. Number one, think about yourself. Which love language is your strength? What are you good at expressing in the love languages? and become really skillful in it and teach others in the church how to do it by your example. Okay? That's the first one. Number 2, what is the love language you need so that you can explain to your spouse, to your family, to your friends, to people who want to express the love language? Because you don't want the frustration of them trying to love you and you needing it, but you don't connect. Right? Third, think of those that you owe love, other people that you care about. What do they need so that you can be effective in loving them? And then finally, for words of affirmation, some of these people that you can give love to, begin to think of some compliments, some encouragements, some appreciations, some kindnesses that you can share with them. Here's what Philippians 4:8 says. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. You want to be a happier person? This is your secret weapon. Okay? And you think about that for the people that you know, and your life and relationships will be turned upside down into fabulous. Okay? Or if it's already great, it'll become fabulous. Okay, let's pray. Dear Father, as we get into these love languages, motivate us. You have planted love in our hearts, and you are holding us responsibility for that seed, your divine love, the ability to express agape love. So help us not to take it lightly, because out of everything, this is to be our middle name. So Lord, speak to us and lead us into that kind of love. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.